people. It's so nice to see you. I cannot believe this day is actually here because this was an idea from months and months and months ago. And I thought at this point, my two guests today would be way too famous to take the time to come on Joe, but I managed to charm them into it. And little did they know, we're going to take this. We've had Karen Commins, and I got that right? Yeah. And Anne Flosnik on before. And this time we're going to take the conversation a step further and go really, really deep. And people are joining as we speak, but just for the audience that we have now, guys, remember, feel free to ask any quirky questions that you would like, but nothing boring that we could find on Google. So I want to launch in with, I have Anne Flosnik and Karen Commins here, and they have both, since I've talked to them last, not only has Anne done like her 60,000 books that she narrates and like somehow does effortlessly and acts like it's like just barely anything at all. Then she started a podcast on Clubhouse, and I might have the timeline wrong here, so let me know if I've got this wrong. I'm not very good with details, but then she had the other force of nature, Karen Commins, join her on her existing Clubhouse podcast. And I'll let you guys speak more on the details of them in a second. And Karen, who we all know for the tiny little ventures on the side, Narrators Roadmap, which has basically shaped the entire industry. And there's not one narrator that's joined in the last like 5, 10, 50 years that has not gone through Narrators Roadmap and learned from Karen Commins. And she's a prolific narrator. She's an expert on public domain books. And pretty much there is nothing that Karen doesn't know. So Karen joined Anne, and then Karen introduced a podcast on Clubhouse and turned that into a podcast. So will you guys explain the timeline a bit more for me? Let's start with Anne, with the one you started and where you got the idea and how you and Karen teamed up and how that came about.
It came about through many conversations over a over years, really, Daniela. It was just finding the vehicle, if you will. And so then Clubhouse came along, and it's just hold the phone and talk. You know, what's not to love? So, so Karen thought that was a good idea too, and she joined me in that, and that was a year ago. So that was in November.
Had you been doing it for a while before Karen joined you? No, okay, so you two started it together, you launched it together. Okay. And what was your room called? What was your podcast called? Is it called a podcast? It's not a podcast until what Karen's done turned hers into a podcast. So what is a Clubhouse show called? A show?
I suppose so, or a room, a house. I don't know what it is.
I like a house. Yeah. I like a show. Yeah. Okay. So you and Karen are the showgirls for your show. And what was it called again?
Narrator Uplift.
Narrator Uplift. And what was the premise behind it? Like, what kind of guests, what agreement did you have, and the theme and everything?
We didn't have really an agreement about it, and it's very loose and very flexible, which is the only way it can be. So it's just whoever comes into my mind or comes into my web or whatever. So it's been really, it's a fabulous thing in that I've been able to spend quality time with people I know and with other people that I've admired from afar. And so it's a mix. It's an eclectic mix. We've had all, yeah.
I love that, like Cup of Joe, actually. So yeah, so it's the same.
Well, you are the OG to coin your. You are it. Yeah. I'm just trotting after you. You're luminary.
Yeah, you with your 6,000 books.
Well, I don't have 6,000 videos, Daniela. So we're talking about a different thing now. I'm into your territory, way far away from mine.
So how does Clubhouse work? Because you upload recordings of it, right? How long do they stay on there? Forever?
Not exactly.
As far as we know, forever.
No.
Oh,
no, they didn't. They made one. Well, not for me, they didn't. I think yours all stayed the same, but mine did change, and they keep changing things. As is their right. It's their property. But in one of the changes, several of my earliest shows vaporized. Whatever they. Yeah, but there are still many of them are still there, but not all of them. I don't have all of mine.
Can you download them from Clubhouse and keep them yourself?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you can keep your own record of all the shows. Sorry?
Yes, you can turn on the replay thing, and then that means that you can download that. Well, Karen will know the specifics of it better than I do.
Okay, so
well, and Anne actually has she has her shows, but they're not all. What she's saying is that they're not all available on Clubhouse because of their machinations, but because of what you're saying of downloading them, she has the all the ones she's done.
So if she ever were to want to repurpose, but if she ever were to want to repurpose them, she could easily do that. It's her property,
right?
Because that's the thing that would annoy me, not having it be my property. At the end of the day, I want to know. I need to download the early because I lost the first 100 calls because my hard drive crashed where I'd stored them all. So I need to download them off YouTube. I don't trust, one day they could just suddenly delete everything and you don't know what happened. And okay, so how did it, because I know you wanted to be a host since you were a little girl, Karen. So you're working alongside Anne. How did you branch off and do the other show as well? How did that come about? And did you have to have a conversation with Anne going, I hope we're still friends. Don't be mad at me. I just want to do this thing. It's a little bit different or.
No. So Anne and I have been friends for years, and I'm very grateful for that fact because she's kind of like my accountability buddy in many regards. So if we talk, it's 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I mean, we talk and we cover it all. And so, like she said, this had been conversations over time that we were having. We decided to do Clubhouse at the same time. She launched first. We decided we would co-host for each other, and she launched first. But we have a different focus. And so, she's totally responsible for booking everybody on Narrator Uplift. And I book people on Pit Stop, which is mine. And like Anne has talked to people who are outside audiobooks because they're people she wanted to talk with, where I focus only on narrators who are doing some other vocation beyond narration. So it may be paid, it may be unpaid, like you were on Pit Stop. So it's a totally different focus. And she started in November. She's got a year in now. Congratulations, Anne. And I started in January. And so I had wanted to do a podcast since podcast became a word. It was either 2005 or 2006. I had been wanting to do a podcast, but to have to set it up ahead of time and do all the recording myself was not something I wanted to do. And so going back to Anne's earlier point, the Clubhouse just came along and it was so perfect because then we don't have to take care of recording it. We just have to show up and make sure the guests show up and feel comfortable. And so we don't have to take care of the actual technical aspect. Now, the downside to this is the audio is not always the most stellar quality, but so it's available on Clubhouse. And she's right. They did lose some of hers in transition. There is an option to download the audio, which we've done for both shows. And I've released mine out so that they're now on podcast platforms. And
how hard was that? How hard was that to do? Was it a complicated? I just hit a button in YouTube. I have no idea where that podcast lies or sits or anything. It's not to me real.
It's only on YouTube. It's only on YouTube.
So I don't see the difference between that and the show.
Well, so like Pitch Stop is on Apple, it's on Audible, it's on Spotify, so it's all on all these podcast platforms, where the button you hit on YouTube only limits it to YouTube. It's still on YouTube, it's just not a visual thing. So it's not that it was hard, it's just that it's time consuming, because
that's what I think.
I add the music on the front and back end, and I don't really edit them unless there's, like I was telling you before we started, if there's a static spike or something that I can see in the audio, I'll take that out. There've been a couple times when I knew I said something stupid and I took it out, but mostly I just, however it is how it goes, because I just don't have time to edit it. And my whole goal with it is just to get it out there and have people listen to the guests, because they're the star. That's what people are turning in to hear. And then if some of them come to Narrators Roadmap as a result of that, well, hey, that's exactly what I want to happen. So it's been wonderful, because it fulfills this long-held dream. And to get to do it with Anne has just been icing on the cake.
Well, I think that you two work together, right? Because you have a pre-existing friendship. So that must take care of a lot of wasted time. And I'm not saying wasted, but anytime you work with somebody that, when you know someone well, it's like a shortcut. You don't have to explain where you're coming from and step quietly around them to make sure you don't upset them. Anytime you work with someone new, you have to always take into consideration, because you don't know them as well. So you two knowing each other for so long, that probably made it seamless, right? Because you've got the power of both of your knowledge and experience and style, without any of the having to get to know each other, right? Like an old married couple. I mean, I think anyone you work with for a long time, you do end up kind of like a married couple a bit, right? Because I have no idea where my chain of thought's going here, but you get my point.
I mean, after we don't really talk to each other about planning it, except just to know who's coming. And then generally after one or the other, because we do them the same week back to back. And so one or the other will usually have the after party, and we'll talk about how it went. And so, the main thing is just paying attention while it's happening live and just trying to help it go smoothly. I mean, that's the main thing.
Yeah, it's all about the Daniela. So there isn't any real work involved, other than, when it's my show, I'm the one that's thinking about what do I want to ask this person. What's the essence of what I'm trying to, what do I think people are going to want to know most about?
Yes, that's what I was. Yeah, that's what I was getting to. That's the because it is about the guest, but there are a lot of decisions that go in. I mean, I had it easy because it was just me. I'm the boss of me, so I'm never going to disagree with me, right? But working with someone else, I think I would find it really, really, really hard, even if I was like their dear, dear friend, to do a joint, like Cup of Joe, or a joint. Do you know what I mean? I think that's an added thing to it, because there's an essence to each call.
Yeah. Well, it would be with that mindset, with the mindset that you are in. But if you just take the mindset of, this is Karen's show, or this is my show, and so, these are the guests that we individually have invited, and so we take the lion's share then of the way the call is going to go. So, and there's no discussion about that. So there's nothing to worry about. You're just kind of along for the ride. Speaking for myself, when I'm on Karen's show, I'm just
each show you have autonomy over your own show. It's clearly demarcated. Right. Okay.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
But whoever is the co-host will jump in when they can, sometimes there's not any break in the conversation to jump in. But, and that's why I say is just listening to what's happening.
Yeah.
And to try to help the other person or help the guest and just keep it moving. But it's really like, so when I'm co-hosting with her, it's her show. And I'm just sitting there listening to a lot of it, which is a lot of fun.
And adding a ton of links, Karen.
Well, that's true.
Really, Karen?
That's true.
Who would have known?
Yeah, I can't help that part, but yeah, I mean, but
no, we appreciate that part.
She has her questions. She has questions that she's done the preliminary with the guest. A lot of times they have particular things they want to talk about. As you know, Daniela, you've been the hostess with the mostest, so
the longest.
Okay,
exactly.
I'm feeling a tiny bit of a guilty twinge because when guests have something particular they want to talk about, they usually get a reply from me going, you do know that's like waving a red flag in front of a bull, and we're going to be talking about the total opposite. Because, well, my big thing on the show, and I think it scares some people, is that the least preparation possible, the better. Because I want it fresh. I will purposefully try to forget everything I know about a person before they come on the show, because I want to discover them while the audience does. But sometimes people are a certain kind of nervous. So they'll present me with a couple of sheets of approved questions. And I'm like, there's a bit of trust required, because I think it's going, okay. So speaking of questions, I have a couple of questions for both of you. I'm going to take you in turn. I'm going to start with Karen because I happen to have you on the screen here. Karen, sorry, you just right here.
I told you to start with Anne.
You're right here. So, was there anything on any of the calls that you've been on where this is a two-part question. Is there anything on any of the call, and you don't have to say names, don't say names because that would make someone uncomfortable, don't put anyone else in it, but a time when you wished you could explain something to a guest in a different way where you felt that they weren't understanding something and you wished you could explain it, and a time when you learned something from a guest, one or the other or both. That you literally wouldn't have known, couldn't have read in a book, or that changed you?
Well, the second part, I mean, I think I learned something on every call, whether it's my show or Anne's. I learned something every time. And because you can't, even with your questions, and this, Daniela, you can't necessarily predict how that conversation's going to go.
Yeah.
And so something invariably comes up that's like, oh, that's great, or that's interesting. I didn't know that. And in terms of explaining things, I don't remember anything like that.
But let's go back to this first one. What's the most profound thing that you've learned?
I didn't know I was going to be tested on that today,
Yep.
So I'm not ready with an answer.
Okay, I'm going to let you think. I'm going to.
Well, you don't have to come back to that. Go ahead and talk to Anne.
I'm going to switch to Anne. Anne, any epiphanies from the call? Anything profound?
I wouldn't necessarily say on any particular call, but the overarching feeling of doing all of this is how we're all the same, how wonderful it is to be able to focus on one person for an hour, uninterrupted. Absolute quality time that even in person I might not have, because usually that's in a crowded place and there's other distractions coming and going, and this is just sheer heaven. So that's something I've discovered, and really how we all do like to talk. We like to be together. We like to be in community. The importance of community, the importance of people who need people, all of that.
Yeah,
it's true. All these cliches are just so true, and that's what I've discovered.
Cliches are cliches for a reason, I find. And what's funny? Right now, Karen's kicking me. I told you to call me second. Okay, Karen, I've got one for you. Say something so you come up on the screen. Cough.
Hi.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. The highest, most wonderful, exciting moment of your audiobook career and the lowest moment of your audiobook career.
Now, you didn't say you were going to ask hard, emotional questions.
It could be your first book, you know what I mean? First book ever, first day as a podcast host. I bet there's tons to choose from.
The lowest one is easy to think of immediately because it's the only time I've ever been fired from a job. And it was the third book I was doing. It was early in the millennium, long ago. And I really didn't like the book. It was so hard for me to narrate the book. And so I delayed. And then plus my father had passed away and I was dealing with a lot of emotion there. And so I delayed too long and I didn't communicate with the publisher. But meanwhile, they lost their audio rights before I mean, it's like I had finished it and I was editing it. I was like so close to turning the thing in. And they said, forget it.
Oh, that sucks.
Because I had delayed too long and they lost the audio rights. So I admit I didn't communicate. I mean, we all know that's the number one thing you have to do. I mean, I certainly couldn't have communicated how much I hated the book, but I could have talked about how I'm just not in a good headspace to try to deal with this.
3 books in, you don't have the confidence.
It was the third of a series. It was the third of the series,
yeah.
But communication goes both ways. So if the publisher is about to lose the audio rights, it seems like they need to have to say, hey, can you give us the book? So
sounds to me like they had an easy way out of not paying when they were going to lose it. I'm not saying.
Well, yeah, so that was probably the worst.
Yeah.
And I think the best would have to be getting a Voice Arts nomination for Road to Terra, because it was the first book I licensed. It's a subject near and dear to me. And it was so unexpected. I didn't even know when the thing came out. I remember seeing it. Drew and I were actually on vacation in Vegas, and I saw it from an email that a friend sent me, like, oh, congratulations. I'm like, what? And, being at the Audies last year on Tanya Eby's compilation was really exciting. Not last year, 2020, losing time. So, those were highs, but it's pretty exciting just being able to do work that I love and keep doing it every day. So every day is a pretty wonderful day.
I've got to bring something up. Do you know that your worst moment just made me love Karen Commins even more than I already did? Because do you know what that says about you? Because you didn't like the book. So your worst moment,
I hated the book.
It wasn't your worst moment because you lost a book that you loved. It was your worst moment because you have such good work ethic and want to always do a good job. And you didn't like that. And that I respect the hell out of that.
I didn't feel my end of the bargain, and I didn't communicate. So, yeah.
I respect the hell out of that. Because think of that as like the ongoing theme of your career and your work and your personality is this striving for quality, striving to do the best job you can do. And so the one time that it's a ding in that is when you felt that you let yourself down. And that's the ultimate artist.
That's only the part of it. I mean, being let go on this project, especially when I was so close to finishing it, was like being kicked when I was down. So It wasn't just my feelings about it. It was the whole situation. So I can't. I can't take the mantle of sainthood that it seems like you're offering me.
No, I still think you can, though, because it's evidence in every single thing you do. I've never seen you call something in. Like, I think I would challenge anyone to find a time that Karen Commins has called it in. And you just don't. And I strive to be like that. I like that.
Well, thank
I
you.
like
I
that.
want you to ask Anne these tough questions.
Anne, cough or something. You're up. And now you got to follow Karen, and that was quite a good one. We're looking for the lowest point and the highest point, a moment that you felt giddy excitement. And if you could start with the lowest point, it would be nice so we could end on a high note. That was well done.
I don't know. I've had so many horrific, dark moments that and I honestly, Daniela, it's almost too painful to confront them.
Yeah, no,
honestly.
those definitely don't. I don't want you guys in tears. That's not the point here. I'm thinking low, like I lost a book or this didn't go well kind of thing. I'm not thinking like dark nights of the soul. I'm going to like have to go to therapy if I tell you thing. No.
Well, you can imagine. I mean, there's no point to even say it. I'm sure I have experienced pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And then remember, there's all the technological changes that have been in this career. And so I don't know, honestly, what to hit on that. And I try not to dwell on those things. So I hope they're not coming up most to my mind. So let's take a high at the beginning, was even having a career in that very early on, working at the Library of Congress. The first day I was officially meant to be there was a blizzard. And it was literally, it's in Bethesda, Maryland, and I live in Virginia. And I wouldn't drive the whole way in any case, because it was always a very nervous driver. And if it wasn't for the Washington, D.C. Metro Center thing, I wouldn't have a job because I couldn't get to Bethesda where the job was.
Yeah.
And there was a blizzard this day. And, you listen to the weather forecasts, knew it was coming. And I had my mother with me too on that particular day. And my husband couldn't help me because he just had knee surgery and had what was called a Jones bandage. So he was kind of incapacitated. He couldn't drive.
Yeah.
I had to get my own. So we just started off at snail's pace down to the metro station. And well, I got there. And when I got there, there was only me and the national recruiter. He was there to show me what to do because I'd never narrated anything in my life. And so, yeah, and some people lived in Bethesda, there was nobody else was there. And so I really felt very good. And it stood me in good stead. Well, here's the first failure then.
And wait, I want to interject because it might help if I tell you the background. The reason I add the low in with the high is because I'm conscious that a large amount of the audience are just starting on the audiobook journey. And I think if we only ever talk about the highs, they will think that they're alone when they encounter the lows. So I think it's so helpful for them to see hugely successful narrators like you and Karen and realize, oh, they've had rough times as well. And then look at the payoff of this amazing giddy moment. So that you see what I'm saying. So definitely, I'm not just trying to like the reality show, let's get her in the most awkward position possible. But yeah, so it's a journey.
I can just jump in and say how much I have always loved that story of Anne's because she's so determined. You know, when she sets her sight on something, don't get in her way because she's going to accomplish it. And well, I love that story because she was determined and she, blizzard. Most people would call in. Anne Flosnik said, I am going to be at that studio.
Yeah, I would have called in. I'm scared.
It stood me in good stead, ladies, and this is why. And this is the low, which became a high. So that's the whole
thing. I thought the snow was the low.
No. That was a moment of opportunity. That was a moment of triumph because I wasn't going to be done in. Yes. Okay. So no, that was not the low. That was the setup for the low that became the high. Was that the first book that the fella helped me with that day was just a Commodore Garden women kind of chick-lit pot boilery thing, but it had the dinner party scene with 7 or 8 people and they came from goodness knows where, all the rest of it. And I didn't have the skills to differentiate barely maybe between a man and a woman, and never mind, half a dozen of each on my first day. So anyway, I got maybe quarter of the way, maybe a bit more through the book, when I was told that this isn't working out, Anne. But, you know, we think the world of you because, well, look, you came in a blizzard and all of that. We think your work ethic is top notch. But for right now, you need to just kind of get your feet a little bit more wet. Let's give you a nonfiction book. And just, you know, so you just get more cognizant of the process. Just go through it, spend more time, so on and so forth. And then you don't have to be worrying about acting and acting in the sense of characters and all of that.
Yeah.
So the simple starter book I got was Jacques Pépin, Simple and Healthy Cookery, with all kinds of exotic vegetables I'd never heard of. And
cookbooks are hard too. Cookbooks aren't easy.
They're not easy. So this was my starter book. It became my starter book. And I didn't talk about reading the instructions that you talked about earlier on. I heard them say, you'll have to read this, you know, everything that comes out of your mouth. Here are sources that you will go to find out how to pronounce any words that you don't know how to. And then you list the source, and they showed me how to do diacritical marks. And I thought, this looks too like mathematics. I'm kind of done before I even start. But no, I'm not going to be put off by a few dots and dashes.
So British. I'm not going to be put off by a few dots and dashes.
Well, what about you? You've had times. Oh, I didn't. If you're not finished, go ahead, Anne. I'm sorry.
I'm almost finished. So anyway, I didn't really believe that they would listen, that anybody could listen to this cookery book. And so I got 60 pages of corrections, which were not paid. 60 pages. And it wasn't just 60 pages, girls. It was jalapeno, or however you say it, I'd have to look it up to this day, times 10. That might be on the first line. I mean, I may as well have recorded the whole book all over. But it does seem that no matter how many corrections you have, it is actually quicker just to correct it. So all of that. And so the whole thing of it was that there was the blizzard, and then it doesn't seem like this is working out. You know, we're going to have to give you some more training. But it did work out ultimately. And I was there for 13 years. And I never really left because I got, you know, then I got commercial work and I just got so busy I couldn't get back. So that was a disaster turning into a triumph, which became my future.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So as artists, we're informed by our constant battle, in my opinion, is with our egos. Ego as in not egotistical ego, but ego as in who we are, how well respected we are, how successful we are. And it's even worse now because of social media, because we're all in the spotlight. And then it's like there's this like race. And so you've been doing this for a long time, and you concentrated on discipline and work ethic from the beginning as well, and sheer grit and determination, which I love. But so now you've got enough books under your belt. I already know the answer, that feeling of needing to placate your ego never goes away. That like there's always a ding of like, why am I doing this? No matter how many books you have. I can imagine having 6 zillion books and still, Scott Brick he's got lots of books, and he was like, no, there was this time, you know. But do you have things that you've learned over the years that you've put on? Karen, prepare yourself. You're going to get this one too. Do you have things you've learned over the years that you've been able to guard your artist's soul from the dings of rejection and self-doubt and the social media stardust that everyone else seems to have while you're in there like killing yourself to do a book? You know what I mean? What do you just get better at it? Do you get better at it? Does it get easier? And do you have things that you tell yourself now or do to make it easier?
I think your skin gets tougher just because it's like water on a stone, drip, 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 drip. You know, the water is that's just a fact of life, and you either accept it, you know, it's the heat in the kitchen kind of a thing. So in a way it gets easier And in a way, I don't know that it ever really does, but you get more used to coping with it, and you recognize the cycles of things a little bit more. I suppose the definition of madness would be thinking that it would be any different.
Yeah, yeah. Like the dreaded dry spell. Like, really, how many times can you be surprised after years and years and years?
Exactly. So you know that there are highs and there are lows. There are times that you're going to, oh, I'm so busy. The rest of life is passing me by. And then there are other times you think, am I ever going to get hired again? Yeah. And right now I'm actually at that cliff. I don't have another book. I finished my book and now I'm at the cliff. And I just have to, trust. So I think it becomes maybe less about fear and more about trust, and looking back at the past, being my own historian.
Yeah. And it's the only job on earth where you can, at the same time, be so ridiculously busy, you don't even know if you're going to have time, and also feel completely unemployed at the same time because you're looking like a few months ahead. Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, Karen, what have you developed over the years to deal with this?
I will only agree to answer this question if you answer what were your highs and lows. What was your high point and your low point? Okay, we told you ours. I think you need to tell us yours.
I will. You go first.
Okay. I already did. No, we're not negotiating this.
Highs and lows. The lowest was I didn't have boundaries with my writers, and at all, because I thought I had to do what I did in all the corporate jobs I'd ever done, and all the acting jobs. You don't get a choice because you're lucky you got a job. So you just put up with it. And so I had a writer get my phone number and she was calling up. It had to be this way or she was going to kill herself. And then after I submitted the book, she did something like 200 something changes, and each one a separate change request. But it wasn't because I'd done anything wrong. It was because she was rewriting it after listening to it. Oh, I can't have this in. And I finally blocked everything. I said, I'm not going to get paid for this. It's fine. And she had a guy start contacting me saying, how can you leave this lady in this position? You've got to help. And I remember I didn't answer the phone when they called to tell me that my father had passed away because I thought it was her. And I got off the plane going to the funeral, and I had like 100 something calls from her coming in. There was no understanding. And I realized at that moment that if I didn't create my own boundaries, thus my very clear welcome pack, that if I didn't create my own boundaries and be very, very clear that there are a lot of people in this world and you don't know. I took my address off my invoice and my phone number. They don't need to see that to pay me. Well, publishers are a whole different thing, obviously, but an independent writer, I will never, ever, ever send my address. And not that I don't trust people. I love everyone, but it's just not necessary. My email address, not necessary to be on the YouTube channel. Those things, you've got to protect yourself. And I learned that was a very low point because I had no boundaries and I couldn't protect myself against this person that also had no boundaries. High point. I'm going to be really disappointed in myself if I can't think of a high point. Because I get them, like when you get that thriller book that you're madly in love with and you're just like literally the happiest human being on the face of the earth. But then like you forget it the minute the book is in and like you're chasing the next thriller book. So every time I've gotten, actually I've had one recently. A writer reached out. I had a day where every single thing went right. Every single thing, like weird things, delivery men coming early things. And a writer reached out and said, in regards to your cold contact in 2016, what are your rates? And then I got an email at midnight, at like 1 minute till midnight, from a writer from ACX saying, I'd love your voice. I'd love you to do my book. And I thought, oh gosh, don't get excited. It's going to be that 30-minute keto book. and they're going to pay 40 pence per finished hour. And I looked it up and I was, hold on, wait, this is a best-selling, wait, it's a psychological, what? So you try to send the email and not sound too excited, like, you know, I'll name a child after you. I'll buy a star for you. I hear you can do that. Like, just give me the book, please, please, please. They didn't even want an audition. And so I'm so excited. I'm not posting a word about it because in the past when I've done that, I've literally the week later had them say, a publisher took me on. I'm so surprised. Years I've been trying to get one, and just a week after you've been spreading it everywhere, suddenly a publisher wanted me. So I'm keeping my mouth stum about this one. But yes, high and low.
Well, that sounds like a great high point, and I'm excited for you.
Thank you. I can't wait. Very excited. Okay, Karen, what have you put into...
I was hoping you'd forget.
What have you put into force that protects you from the emotional highs and lows of this job? And what have you changed? How have you changed as a person since starting this career to better deal with? Because you are, I have to say, you've done something right, because you're the most... Like, I avoid messaging Karen if I'm in a grumpy, pissed off mood, because I know she's going to like say the right wise thing. And if I don't want to do the right wise thing, but you always tell yourself to do the right wise thing. How do you keep that up?
I'm very into the power of our words, because our words are self-fulfilling prophecies. And so whatever you put on the end of the sentence, I am happy, I am hurt, I am miserable, I am magnificent, whatever that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I work hard, and I'm not saying I'm always successful, and you and Anne both know that I'm not, because there are times when I will be like in that whiny state of, you know, why did this happen? Why couldn't that happen?
But you still turn yourself around by the end of the sentence, though. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but you never let yourself keep on that road, ever. I've never seen you do it.
Well, ask Drew and ask Anne. She's seen it, but it's, I'm on that road less frequently. And when I'm on it, I don't spend as much time there, because I have to be very vigilant, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, to put my words in the direction I want my life to go.
Yeah.
And I have tactics that I actually use. So there's a quote from Paulo Coelho that when I see myself getting on this road and I have to say it out loud, stop being who you were and change into who you are.
I love that. I love that.
And just when I say that, it's like I get a whole tingle through my body. And then if that doesn't work, I have a letter to my compassionate self that I wrote, and it's like, what if somebody came to me and was having these problems? This is what I would tell them. And it, in this letter that I wrote to myself, which I then read aloud, because reading aloud, your words are coming out your mouth and going right back in your ears, so your brain has no choice but to believe what you're saying. So I read these words about myself aloud, about what I'm good at, what my contributions are, whatever. You know, it's all in my compassionate letter to myself, because the biggest thing that the ego has to realize is it's not all about me. We're all here together. And just because something's happening great for you doesn't mean that's taking something away from me. It has nothing to do with me, unless I did it for you, and then that's a whole other story. But, you know, because I used to get so triggered from all the Facebook posts. I mean, I would feel like somebody was literally punching me in the gut.
Really?
Oh, I just got a 10-book series. Oh, I just got 16 awards, or, you know, whatever it is. And people are entitled to post their good news. I want them to post their good news. I post good news. We all do. But, you know, if you're having that low moment where you're feeling like nobody's paying me any attention, I'm not getting any jobs coming my way, nobody will answer an email, And then you see somebody saying, I just got a 27 book series. It's like, okay, simmer down. And so I have these remediation techniques, and one of them is Paulo Coelho's quote. One of them is my compassionate letter to myself. I have a praise folder in Evernote, because of course everything's in Evernote, where I look back and see what other people have said about me. I write in my journal. I write in my journal every day anyway, but if I'm feeling in one of those moods, I'll write about that, and I will talk myself out of it. So, if you say that I say these things to you, I'm not saying anything to you that I don't tell myself.
I know, and that's why I admire you so much, and also avoid you when I can't. But I think you said a quote. Were you the one that told me the worrying is praying for things you don't want? Somebody told me that. It's stuck in my head.
But I'm going to adopt it.
And it makes so much sense. But I can't get it out of my head.
I mean, my big thing has always been comparison, because I've always been a very competitive person. And so if you fall in this comparison trap, we've all heard to compare is to despair. But I add that, to compete is to deplete. And so if I start feeling competitive, then it takes all my energy toward that. And I'd much rather put that energy on something good that I want to happen.
I love that. I do love that. Okay, that's a good answer. That's a very, very good answer. Okay. I've got Karen on the screen, so I'm going to start this round with Karen. You're the lucky one up.
No, go to Anne.
This is the kind of thing you'll love. Actually, I swear to you, you will love this. Favorite character in any book you've ever done, or even in any book. Favorite character, the character that you could see yourself through.
Well, okay, you're adding conditions to that. So if we just go favorite character, Scarlett O'Hara.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I can see that. That's good. Okay, very, very good. Anne, favorite character?
Esme Lennox, in The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox, because she was misunderstood, she didn't fit in, and she was kind of locked away, which that won't be my but the whole thing about not fitting in, and it kind of came out right in the end, or she got her revenge, whatever, there was a whole cycle and an arc, and that's how I feel life is. And that would also be my answer to the previous question about how to deal with the negative kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, and kind of this is what we were talking about before, and it always seems when there's a conversation there is certain themes, so that's what I've found.
Yeah.
And my theme for today is going to be patterns and seasons and cycles, because when I get down, I know it will pass. It's like night turns into day, summer to winter, all of that. And an image that I have, and I do all the, I read all the good self-improving books and keep those things in my mind. But I love that there was a Doris Day film, of all things, and it was a very sad Doris Day film. I must go and see what the name of it was. And it had Frank Sinatra in it. And he was called Barney, if that helps anybody out there to know what I'm talking about. And Barney.
Anybody type in the chat if you know which one we're talking about. I can't think of it, but I'm a big Frank's fan.
Yeah, it's not a happy film. So he goes out to kill himself in one of those old-fashioned cars that has a windscreen wiper that literally goes like this. And the snow, it just starts off, the snow is slowly falling, and the engine is on, and he turns off that the windscreen wiper, and the way that the windscreen just slowly, completely coalesces with snow. And oftentimes, I like to tell you, I'm a nervous driver. That's another thing. Maybe I've been a nervous driver throughout my life, driving my own life, never mind in a car. But when I'm in one of those awful snowstorms, and I had that Bethesda thing where I had to be on the road for 2 hours and then, another hour and a half on a metro, all of that. So I was on the road 3 times a week, a lot on the highways. Yeah. And then there would be these snowfalls that come out of nowhere.
God,
and I would think of Barney. But the thing of it is, kind of, if you only pulled over to the side of the road or whatever, if you put it aside, it will stop. Eventually, this thing will stop. The light will come, the snow will melt. Nothing stays the same, good or bad. That's what takes me through life. Nothing stays the same. That's what I hold on to.
I love that. And Christine says it's Young at Heart, the movie. Yeah. So I love that. I love that. But I'm such a morbid thinker because then my brain turns. This is the kind of thing that I won't normally admit to Karen that I think. My brain immediately goes, I know, but my budgie, and I go to like all the things I could lose that would that I love that would end. But I think that's being raised by a mother that suffered depression. So it's always, I wonder if you can get over your genetic. I think it might just, when you get older, it might just be a matter of developing language, like Karen says, that developing language so that when those thoughts arise, not thinking you're never going to think like that again, but that when the thoughts arise, you say, no, it's this way, right? You challenge
You can't help the first one. I'm sorry, you can't help the first thought.
Yeah.
You can help the second one.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. And I've spent my whole life trying to stop the first thought. But recently I just thought, I think I'm just inclined to immediately come up with my entire family's going to die and it's going to be miserable and we're all, you know what I mean? So I think you're right. I think, and so what? You think it and then you just tell yourself it won't. So why Scarlett O'Hara?
Oh, well, because she was smart, she was determined, she was goal-oriented, and she knew what she wanted and she went after it. And she did what she needed to do to survive. I mean, there's a lot to admire there. I mean, take the whole romance and immaturity out of it, and that emotional core, though, of that spirit, I just really relate a lot to that.
I love that. Okay, now I am going to ask you guys, I'm going to do a little twist on the final question that I normally ask, because I can't think of two people that would be better placed to answer this. And I think for our audience, there's not a person that won't eventually need to hear it. So what would you tell a person, like one sentence of advice, or just a small piece of advice, if they are going through uncertainty and don't know if they should keep going, and at whatever part of their career they're going through one of those times that Anne says, that what would you tell them? Karen, because you're here first, you're on the screen, make my job easier.
No, I think you should ask Anne first.
Ask Anne first. Okay, Anne, what would you tell them?
Nothing comes of nothing, and if you kind of stop this journey, you're going to have to start another one. So I always think it's easier to keep on. And that whole theme of day to night to day season, nothing stays permanently. As if you take action. Now, you can't kind of give in and just say, oh, woe is me, I give up. You have to keep a forward focus, keep a straight line. And it isn't straight, I know it isn't, but just try to keep some forward momentum, try to keep your energy, send another email, do something, but don't just waste all your time saying, oh, woe is me, this is never going to change, I'm no good. That's the last thing to say. We are all fabulous narrators. We just are. You just keep on going. It's the same for everybody. Nobody feels any differently. I really would question that anybody would think any differently, in the sense of it's not easy for everybody every day. And, we don't see everybody's life and the challenges that they have outside of this job. There's a lot goes on, and you just have to, because if you give it, if not this, what else? And that becomes an even more complicated question. And then you go, whatever, levels you have attained on this journey, if you give it up, then you start at the bottom somewhere else. So
I love that. And also, and that's why it's the perfect question, because there is nobody that's going to watch this video that hasn't been at that point, isn't going through that point, or isn't going too soon. It's every single one of us. So that's perfect. Thank you very much, Anne. Karen, you're up.
Just because whatever it is you want hasn't happened doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It takes a lot for the universe to conspire to bring forces together. And if you see that it has happened for somebody else, that's just evidence that it can happen for you too. And I love the story about the person who was digging for gold, and they kept digging, and they just never could find the gold. And they said, screw it. And they sold their claim. And then the next person came and started 3 feet away from where that person stopped. Boom, there's all the gold in the world. And so you never know how close you are. You never know how close you are to that treasure coming for you. So you just have to keep going.
I love that. You too. This has been magic, actually. I already knew it would be with you two, but this has been pure magic. I'm going to ask you, please, to email me or message me any information, including anyone watching this call. I'm going to add the timings of the pit stop and narrator's uplift or narrator uplift.
Narrator uplift. Yeah.
Narrator uplift. I'm going to put those in the about section below. So if you're watching this video, you can find that information in the about section and any links. And we've got Karen here. I'm sure you can come up with a link for us for something, Karen.
1 or 2 links. Yeah.
And Narrator Roadmap and everything, and website. So you'll have all the information below in the about section. And Anne Flosnik, Karen Commins, this actually exceeded my expectations, and that's saying a lot. So I'm very, very grateful that you've both taken the time for this wonderful chat, and I actually think this could help a lot of people. Because you are right, Anne, that it never stays the same. They're dark and they're light days. And if somebody needs it and they happen on this call, get a good cappuccino and let Anne and Karen solve the world, which you guys have done. So thank you. Thank you, both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for asking us.
Thank you for coming. We'll have to do this again. We'll make it like a yearly thing. Like next holiday season, we'll be like 90. So what are you guys doing? So I will start chasing you next year. See if I can convince you to come back on. Thank you, everyone. Mwah. Thanks to the studio audience. You guys are fabulous as always. Bye. Bye.
Daniela.
Bye.